Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we're going to be taking a look at Mr. Fantastic, the Maker uniform, and we're going to be doing a couple of comparisons between him and Apocalypse in ABX, and then between himself and himself with a Rage and an Energy in World Boss Legend. And I'm doing this partially because I got a lot of feedback after the tier list video, which I appreciate, and a lot of people were like, man, you're sleeping on Maker, that, this, that, that. So it's like, okay, you know what? You think I'm sleeping on the dude? Let's find out if he's underrated, overrated, or right where he belongs. So, first things first, we're just going to establish his ceiling in ABX. Despite getting a uniform a month ago, he still cannot compete with Apocalypse, who got his uniform way back before even the pandemic in 2019. So this is the base team for Apocalypse. Use Abomination, Lead, and Taskmaster. We're just going to jump in here, and I'm just going to do the first, I'm going to do up to the first Beast jump. So as soon as the Beast jumps away from me and my score stops because he stops taking damage, we're going to cut the cameras dead ass. I don't have the best rotation for Apocalypse in the world, but I'll do my best to try and make it work. I have a lot of practice with Apocalypse, I will say that, but I think Maker's rotation is pretty straightforward, so I don't have to worry too much about that. But it's going to be very clear cut. You know, we're not going to have to do this contest for too long here, in ABX at least, to know who the champ is. And again, people in the comment section weren't necessarily saying that Maker can keep up with Apocalypse in ABX, but I just want to make it very clear. The only place besides a leadership where Maker's going to have comparable value to anyone in the combat class is going to be World Boss Legend, and it's going to have to be with a Energy in this case. I don't know, maybe with the Rage. But anyways, I paused it here because we're actually not even done. We got about 10 more seconds before he jumps, and we're already at 2.5 million. I've already done a few tests, which is why I'm saying 2.5 million now, and I'm sort of getting you to remember that number in your head because it's going to serve well. Okay, so we ended up getting to 3 million, just under, a hair under 3 million. That might not seem like something worth stressing about, right? 2.5 million to 3 million. Okay, so let's check this out. First things first, as a combat type, Maker does not have, he has paralysis and he has burn, but he does not have silence. So we have to use his own leadership, of course, and Taskmaster is a great support, but we actually have to bring Apocalypse in to strike for us. And of course, I'm simulating the combat villain day. Some of you guys are going to be in the comments already like, there's better supports out there, there's better leaderships. You know, I'm fully aware of that. I could have used Cyclops instead of you know, Abomination, etc. But I'm simulating the combat villain, which is where he would be competing with Apocalypse in the first place. Now, he's going to have a more comparable score. I don't think his score is comparable for combat villain silence month, because Maker doesn't have silence at all. But for the burn and paralysis months, he will have a slightly more comparable score because of the fact that he can actually burn and paralyze on his 1 to 5, which means that he'll be able to stay in the fight longer. And you don't, you know, it's kind of silly if you're going to build Maker for ABX and then you're going to build Apocalypse for ABX to help Maker on one of the 3 months. Why not just use Apocalypse for all 3 months, right? So yeah, the other thing is I want to highlight with a Rage. Rage is actually the best CTP for ABX, so I wasn't going to swap him to an Energy and then test him in ABX because that just wouldn't have made any sense at all. So that's why I'm getting the Rage testing here done out of the way and sort of as a good comparator here before we move on, because Rage is king in ABX most of the time, unless you can pop a Judgment, but that's a totally different bag of chips. The other thing I want to highlight is that I'm not using one of the rotations that I was recommended, and I'll explain why. So here we got 2.38 million. Remember when I paused it at 218 and I said 2.5 million for Apocalypse, and I kept playing and I got to 3 million? So he is anywhere from 500,000 to 700,000 or 600,000 points slower, and that's just in the first 52 seconds. So multiply that out by the 3 minutes, and your Maker is at least 1.5 million points behind Apocalypse. That's a huge number when you're talking about competitive scores. Obviously, for casual players, it doesn't really matter, but when you're talking about competitive scores, it absolutely matters. The highest I was able to do with Maker when I practiced this is 2.5, so that's why I'm saying 500k, because normally I get about 2.5. This was a bit of a worse run. There's some RNG with the accumulation on the tier 3, so you know it's sort of subject to ups and downs. But now that we've established that he basically has no legs to stand on for ABX wise, because he's more than 1 million behind, which is a pretty big deal, right? It's not like people are coming around saying Hawkeye Bullseye is as good as Corvus, when we all know Corvus is a mil plus ahead of him in ABX, right? So we sort of have to apply the same logic here to both characters. But now we're going to do the individual testing, which I find a little bit more interesting. I just wanted to do that there to spice it up a little bit. We're going to test Maker with a Rage and then with an Energy, and I'm going to explain why I was not doing 3 cancel, 4 cancel, 5, but rather I was doing 4 cancel, 5, and then 3 later on. I'll explain that when I'm running through with the Rage here. But the highest stage, keep in mind for Maker, the highest stage he can actually go to against Null is going to be 19. Because he's a male and he's a human, but after that it gets into heroes, which he cannot apply for, so then he's just a leadership with his future Foundation uniform or whatever, and that's normally where I'm using him, which is why I don't have his Maker uniform equipped at all. And then of course after this it goes to female, which he's not applicable for, and then it goes up to male, and then I believe after male it's like villain or something like that, so maybe he can do, or maybe it's like female villain, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, so 19 is where he goes. Because I have so much Pierce, I'm actually not going to be using Thing. I know Thing is obviously a better team here than Invisible Woman. I'm going to be using Invisible Woman because she still gives me 2 team ups that I can use for lots of damage. And it's just going to make the testing a little bit easier, okay? Because if I bring, basically with this much Pierce on stage 19, if I bring in Thing, he can do this in like a minute, which is just too fast for you to really notice the difference between a Rage and a Energy. Now, the reason why I'm doing... Okay, this is not the best example. The reason why I'm doing 3 at the end is there's a 10-second buff. The third skill has an all attack or a physical attack buff, which lasts 10 seconds. The reason why I am doing it after rather than canceling into it is because I can still get the damage. I can still cash in on the damage of it, and it basically just makes me skip 1 rotation. So I basically lose the buff on the very first rotation of the fight, but from then on, right now, you know, I'm doing it off the proc, so it's not quite as good, but from then on, when I use the third skill, I'm using it with, you know, 2 to 3 seconds left of the Rage proc, which actually gives me more damage, and I'm still going to have the buff up essentially perpetually after the very first rotation, so it really doesn't matter that much, right? Here, we can pop it here just for the buff on the tier 3, but again, the tier 3 is going to depend mostly on accumulation, so like there, if you get slapped and stuff like that, that's really going to help a lot of the damage. Otherwise, his damage is a little bit, as you can see, it's not horrible, but it can be a little bit lackluster at times. But this is with a Rage. Obviously, things are different with an Energy. But yeah, this is a pretty standard clear speed based on the testing that I've already done. But yeah, you see that? I want to cash in on that damage on the third skill. So I actually think this is a better rotation. So we get there in about 1.5 minutes, which is this is a good amount of time for testing, right? If it's going too fast, you can't really notice the difference between CTPs. Here, we have a long enough amount of time that if Energy is really going to help, even if I miss a rotation, right? Even if I miss a proc, because that's going to happen with Energy. You're never going to play, no one's going to play perfectly all the time, although they'll tell you in the comments that they always play perfectly. You're always going to miss a proc. I'm going to miss a proc. Everybody's going to miss a proc, right? So this allows you to see what a real run looks like rather than just, you know, hyper boosting through, whatever that word means, the fastest possible time with the best possible team, and then not being able to see the difference because it's like, oh, Rage was a minute and Energy was 55 seconds, so 5 seconds faster, go spend 600 crystals. No one's going to spend 600 crystals for 5 seconds, my dude, right? It's just not happening. So yeah, a minute, just under a minute and 30 seconds. So we're going to swap over to the CTP now. Remember that I did the testing in ABX purposely beforehand because there's just no way he's going to be better in ABX with an Energy. For ABX, Pierce doesn't seem to have any effect, and Rage seems to have a very good, very high effect, whereas the chain hit from Energy, as good as it is, just doesn't seem to matter as much, even with Pierce. It just because there's no Pierce effect in ABX as far as we're concerned, or as far as the testing shown. So I don't have. I may have to re-roll one of these. You know what? We're gonna take a quick commercial break, and I'm gonna come back, and I will have re-rolled one of these CTPs so that they are better for him with more ignore dodge because he needs it and a 200 proc. Well, it happened. RNG, you know, reared its ugly head, and I probably went through 50 or 60 obelisks, and I never saw a single 200 proc whatsoever. So I decided to cut my losses after going and spending like 200,000 Rift tokens, opening up more of these so that I could go and craft more extreme obelisks. Yeah, I actually did that, and I still have, let's see, how many 4 stars waiting in my inventory? A lot. Yeah. Okay. Well, I already did all the 5 stars, and I sold the 1 to 3. So yeah, we're gonna have to go ahead and make do with a 180 proc. Thankfully, at the very least, it has a very, very high ignore dodge roll. That's what I was hoping to get, a very high ignore dodge and very high proc. Obviously, 200 proc was the best. The crit damage doesn't matter as much because I've got crit damage on my cards. And so he's actually capped on essentially all important stats here. You know, basically capped on a crit rate, attack speed, crit damage, ignore defense, and cooldown. And he's almost capped on dodge despite not having a rage. So this should be a very, very good test for him. And let's see what he can do. So we're going to keep the team the same, and we're actually going to keep the strikers the same because he still doesn't have capped ignore dodge. Believe it or not, with the 40% from his CTP of energy and the 40% from the strikers, he's actually still missing a little bit, like less than 10%. But anyways, proccing on 6 here, this is where the majority of his damage comes from, and it's actually a really nice rotation. We are also then going to cancel. We didn't get the proc exactly on, but we did dodge the cage, which is the really important part here. There we go. We get the 4 cancel 5 combo. Okay, we're gonna do that. We get the buff from 5, and we get the chain hit from 4, along with 6, triggering our energy and letting us synergize with the chain hit. We're gonna have to take this stun here. There's nothing we can do. Well, we could have like ran back if the strikers weren't around, but you know, it's kind of hit and miss. So we're just going to do this and proc. Nicely done. And we can actually set ourselves up for the next rotation, where we can actually just do 4 co-op 6. And we get the chain hit from the 4. Awesome. There we go. Perfect stuff. Hit the 3. Oh, we got snared. Yeah, what's his name? Ancient One was slacking, dog. Ancient One was slacking. So there we go. Honestly, guys, that was a pretty great run, and it's almost identical in terms of the clear time. Yeah, it's a 180 proc instead of a 200 proc, but is a 200 proc really gonna add that much? I honestly don't know. Is the 2 striker change gonna add? You know what? Why don't we test the 2 strikers? People are gonna bitch and moan. Well, like 5 people are gonna complain in the comments. So let's go ahead and swap those 2 strikers because we basically got 40% on his CTP of energy that we didn't have from his rage. So we're gonna go ahead now. We basically have 60% ignore dodge when his regular 1 to 5 is up, and then when his 6 pops, he gets another 7 seconds of what is it? 70%. I think we missed our proc there. Let's go ahead and see what the damage looks like. Yeah, we absolutely missed that first proc. Oh, but we dodged the cage, and we kind of get this proc to make up for it. So let's roll with this now. Let's see what we can make out of this. Oh, we're doing this another proc? We may have the RNG of the CTP of energy for an extra 5 seconds worth of time. It's really not worth the headache for some characters, and I really think that Maker is one of those characters. So color me unsurprised here, guys. Did we dodge the cage? We did. Yep, and we got the hit, and we got the proc on. Yep, look at that. This is like, okay, this has gone from a bad run to possibly what a perfect run would look like. Because there's no way you're gonna get the, you know, you're gonna simulate the amount of damage, right, that I was able to. Let's get another one in. Wow. So this looks, okay, this is a lot more impressive. Okay. Okay. This is a lot more impressive. This is what I was hoping to see on the first run. So maybe the 2 strikers. I mean, if all of his damage is coming from his 6 anyways, then he's getting 60% ignore dodge from his 6. I think 60 or 80%. And he's getting 40 from the energy. So he really doesn't need more than 1 striker, right? This is much, much more impressive. I'm actually surprised. But we also have to acknowledge, okay, so I missed a couple procs. I think I missed the first tier 3 proc, but On top of missing the proc, I was able to dodge both cages. The cage adds 5 seconds because it stuns you for 5 seconds. So this would have been a 350 clear instead of a 355 clear. So you know what? If I hadn't missed those procs and I had gotten hit by the cage, it probably would have been around this time or maybe even faster. Maybe it would have been at a minute. So I'm not really sure what happened with the first run and why the timing was so bad and so close to, I mean, maybe those 2 strikers, it's only 12%, or I guess 22%, excuse me, increased damage to villains, but I guess that's enough. Yeah. So this is more impressive for sure. This is almost, well, it's about 20 seconds. It's 20 seconds faster. But yeah, it is faster. And a 1 minute clear definitely means that he has potential to be able to go higher. The thing is, I think what a lot of people are seeing for Mr. Fantastic is they're seeing a mighty or a brilliant energy with him, and then that is sort of influencing their idea that energy is just better than rage. When it comes to a regular energy versus rage, there are characters that definitely can benefit from it a lot more, like Moonstone and other characters, Gambit. But for a character like Maker, you really have to weigh the frustration and the inconsistency of an energy versus the higher damage. Sure, I was 20 seconds faster, and maybe you could tweak it and be 30 seconds faster, but that's not going to be on every single run. That you're not going to get that consistent run every single time. You're going to get interrupted. You're going to miss procs. It's just going to fall out of tune, out of rhythm. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I wouldn't recommend an energy for him now, but I don't think that him being able to do this 20 seconds faster with an energy makes him worthy of that higher spot on the tier list, which was kind of the catalyst for this video in general. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting piece of content to do. It's a character that I honestly didn't get to highlight that much because we were really just hoping for more buffs for him. We ended up getting the buffs. We ended up getting a heal on Elastic Skin, which is great. But even after the buffs, the community sort of cumulatively went, because he still wasn't nearly as good as Human Torch, right? And I still think that's the case, which is why Human Torch is True Gods and Mr. Fantastic is not the Maker, but you let me know what you make of it. Thanks so much for watching. Hit me down below in the comments with your comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.